Stephen, Kevin, thanks for joining me today. One thing I've been hearing a lot of from our clients is that their ISPs are starting to offer speeds greater than 1 gig, greater than gigabit. Um, and that's kind of caused some issues for us, trying to figure out if the current networks that are in place support it. But just start with, is this something that you've been hearing from your clients? Are you seeing this in your market?
Yeah, Keith, great to see you both as well. And it's certainly a topic that's come up recently here in Texas. Two major carriers, AT&T and Xfinity, have both announced much faster speeds. AT&T all the way up to 6 gig internet speeds available in our area, and Comcast or Xfinity, whatever you want to call them. They're at 2.5 gigs now. And so we're seeing an increase in this, which of course, as they announce that and broadcast it, our clients gobble that up and they're curious about it and want to learn more. And so without a doubt, we're seeing it come in. Lots of
You're
questions
seeing
and demand.
6 gig internet speeds offered to residences?
Yes, by
I
AT&T
had
in
not even
Houston.
heard that yet. That's wild. So, Stephen, we brought you on here because of your technical knowledge. Tell me, what are the complications that arise when somebody, say, purchases 6 gigabit internet speed for a house they built 5 years ago?
So we
So
all
Kevin,
remember when we went from having 50, 60, 200 meg service to 1 gig service. And all of a sudden, our local Wi-Fi networks in our houses couldn't keep up to what the maximum speed was. We were either running cords across the floor or just dealing without taking advantage of that extra bandwidth. Eventually, we started seeing gig networks throughout the house, Wi-Fi 6 really allowing us to tap in to the max that was offered, to the point where now we have a lot of clients, especially with more advanced technical systems, a lot of streaming. There's a lot of kids downloading games. We're working remotely more often. As you get multiple people in the home, they start maxing out what those ISPs can bring you at 1 gig only. So
Yeah,
they've started offering. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think this is one of those things where people would assume that if the ISP, if my internet service provider is going to sell me the service, obviously I can take advantage of it. They wouldn't sell me something I couldn't use. But what I think, especially for our clients who are typically in luxury homes that are, 5,000 square feet or much, much larger, these systems are designed for an average user, which is probably in I mean, sub 2,000 square foot house. And so
Mhm.
they're selling them a router, assuming that the wireless capability of that one device will cover the entire home. Where this becomes a complication for us and our clients is that they need more than just that router. We're probably we're using access points or, extending their wireless network through the whole house, which has to be done using wires, which have to go through things called network switches. And essentially, from my understanding, if any piece along the way is not above the maximum speed that you're trying to enjoy, you're simply not going to get it. I mean, that's correct, right?
Exactly.
absolutely.
Kind of, you can kind of think about it a little bit like watering a lawn, right? You've got a single spigot on the side of the house. We run a hose out. We split it off, send one hose to the front of the house, one hose to the back. Neither of those sprinklers are running at full speed anymore, regardless of how big the sprinkler is. There's only so much water getting there.
And
So,
then you turn on the washing machine, and then your kids get in the bathtub, and then
exactly.
eventually none of it really is working. That's the experience you're telling me our clients are going to get.
Exactly. So what we're trying to do and standardize a lot is get everybody at least to a 2.5 gig pipeline inside the house. So as soon as it comes from the incoming ISP, we've got a full 2.5 gig all the way to those wireless access points, which is a ridiculous amount of data. But as your house gets larger, your system gets bigger, your kids keep playing video games, they keep getting assigned homework, and you keep wanting to spend Friday afternoon at your home office instead of downtown, it comes in play and really allows everyone to do what they need to do without stepping on each other's toes.
But not
So,
only that, Stephen, but to that point, right, where when we talk about this, we're talking about setting up a network and getting the home set for the future, for how long they're going to be living in it. And so a lot of times while
Exactly.
we're making investments in networking gear or in any of the other products we're putting in, we consider how long that's going to last and how much they're going to get out of that and how often that needs to be upgraded or changed. And so we know those speeds are here. They're available. Maybe not in every area, of a major city or a city that you're in. But we know that they're coming, and we know that they're readily available in most major cities now. And so by looking at what are we actually putting in, we've got to consider the fact that not only are we taking advantage of what we're doing today, but ultimately what's going to happen in the next 5 or 7 years and where we're going to be. Because earlier you'd mentioned about how, we laugh when you opened up your laptop and you had 50 megs of connection. I got to tell you, where I live, I just got past that about a year ago. And so
Right.
it's nice to get caught up with the rest of the world. And so
my personal anecdote on that, and I think I've told Steven this, was in 2018, we bought this house that was 1 year old, and I had to add a network switch in my panel to get wireless through the house and in the backyard. And I thought, I've got 50 meg service. I'm not going to need more than that. And I bought a 10100, so a switch that can't go higher than 100 gigs or 100 megs, thinking that I'm not spending $200 on this little PoE switch. This $24.99 one from Amazon will be just fine. Within 6 months, we got a new ISP in the neighborhood, and all of a sudden I could get 300 for what I was paying, or for less than I was paying for 50. So I upgraded, and the 50 worked fine at that moment in time. But as soon as 300 was available and everybody could get at least 100, all of a sudden Netflix is streaming 4K. And just instantly, within a year, there are things that I can no longer take advantage of because this artificial limitation I put on myself. And our clients aren't spending $50 on a piece of networking gear. Like, we are trying to outfit their whole home in something that's going to be incredibly robust and reliable. And I agree with you, taking the short-term view and saying, well, this is good enough, instead of going, just the next step further, it isn't really a good deal for most people at the end of the day.
Well, I think you're right. As we start seeing higher resolution video and audio being pushed out, and the adoption rate of streaming, obviously it's here. We're using it all the time, and different streaming that goes out. The ability to watch my kids game, right, and they're online doing their thing, and I'm doing Teams calls, and my wife is got a Netflix show coming in, and my 2-year-old's got Blippy streaming in, and like every other million thing that's going on all the time. And that's just the reality of the world we live in. And we've got to make sure that all these things can work without interruption, because that's how life is today, and is only going to be more so in the future.
Exactly. And so what we've tried to do more and more of is find a good way to stay ahead of the curve and away from the bleeding edge, right? So, we're, as a standard, kind of attacking that 2.5 gig network throughout the house, and what we're wiring will support 10. So if you're the head of radiology at a hospital and you're regularly uploading and downloading 4 or 5 gig files, we can make that happen without tearing things apart in the house later, without saying, oh, well, we were planning on our office being on this end of the house, and now it's on the other end, and we just can't support that. The key is to just make sure you have a robust network in place that's going to meet all of those needs Kevin talked about, and the 15 that we don't know exist until next February, when Google or AT&T releases a new service.
I think that's the most important part, is we don't necessarily know what the future is. And 2.5 gigs is useful now. Like, it is not beyond the realm of possibility that you could saturate that with a family full of people in your home. But now you're getting the service as if you have this dedicated line directly to your computer and you're not sharing it with your family. I mean, you can deliver that experience, but kind of like, I didn't realize how limiting, I wasn't doing videography for Bravas when I bought my 10100 network switch. I'm doing that all the time now. And that would have been incredibly limiting to what I could do, and would have drastically reduced my productivity. I mean, to the point of being unusable, like not being able to work from home. We don't know in 1 year, 2 years, 5 years, what we're going to be expecting out of our networks. My stupid example that I mentioned to you before we started this podcast was, if I want to edit video, I have to have a little device stuck to the back of my laptop that I can plug into, because that's the only thing that's fast enough. But then when I want to store that data, I want to have it on the cloud as well. Well, how cool will it be when internet speeds are so fast that I don't have to have it locally? I just put everything in the cloud and work as if it's my desktop computer. Like, that seems like a really powerful future that's just not far away.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, any closing thoughts, anything that you think is important for somebody to consider as they're finding out that their ISP may be offering these higher speeds? What should people be thinking about, and what steps should they take before they just upgrade?
Yeah, I think people need to really consider that they're not just thinking about today, they're thinking about the future. And so, kind of being cognizant of the fact that technology evolves and it evolves very quickly right now. And so, how do we make sure that whatever you're investing in, that you've picked the right components and the pieces, and that that's set up to take advantage of where we'll be in the future. I'd also look at like, do some research and find out what's available in your area. Different areas are going to have different things that vary. Not necessarily that I'd be tied to that necessarily, but it'll help give you a good gauge on where do you sit versus where kind of is the industry going. Are you going to see a lot of advances in the next couple of years in your area because you're a little further behind? You may not have that infrastructure today. And so I think those would be kind of two big points that I'd consider.
And it's also key to think about what your plan is for managing data and networking in your house as you go forward. In the same way that we place laundry rooms and washing machines in areas where we need them more, or we make sure we have good sunlight where we're going to grow plants or kind of entertain in. These are things that are so ingrained with our lives going forward. We want to make sure we're covering a home well and that it's going to be something that you can forget about once you've purchased and installed, because it's always going to work and be with you as you move forward.
Yeah. And I would just add, we're not expecting that clients know if their networking equipment is gigabit plus. Like, that's something we're happy to do. So for anybody that is, hearing about higher speeds in their areas, reach out to Bravas. If you don't have a Bravas locally, find a good integrator that can kind of help walk you through that process. If somebody sells you something before they've even looked in your home, maybe that's not the right person. But ideally, look at what you have, understand what your needs are, and kind of how future ready you want to be. As Stephen mentioned, when we do anything that we put in the walls, essentially, that is 10 gig ready. We may not sell somebody 10 gig networking equipment, like the actual electronics, because maybe they don't need it yet. But the cost of replacing that won't be the same as tearing all of that cable out of the walls. So I would just say, look into what you have in your home, because if you just go out and pay for the fastest speeds you can get, you're probably not going to get the experience you're hoping that you paid for, unless you're in a really small home and you don't have any wired devices. Maybe then you can, and we'd be happy to tell you that. But I think for a lot of people listening to this and a lot of our clients, that simply wouldn't be the case.
That's right. Good stuff, Keith.
All right. Well, thanks for the
Thanks.
time. It was great talking to you.
All right. Good to see you both.
Cheers.